Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be taking a trip back in time. No, not with a time machine, haha, but through the words of Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre. You're curious about this collection of his pastoral letters written between the 1950s and 1967? Well, you're in the right place to explore them with us.
Now, we know Lefebvre later became known for his traditionalist views and, well, his break from the Catholic Church. But for this deep dive, let's put that aside for now. We're here to explore what these letters, mainly written to his priests and parishioners, reveal about his worldview during, well, a time of massive change, really.
And joining us to unpack all of this is expert speaker ready to dive in with us.
Absolutely. I'm eager to see what insights these letters offer. It's like we're opening a time capsule, getting a glimpse into the church and the world during such a pivotal period.
Right. It's like, picture this. It's, say, the post-World War II era, the 1950s and early 60s. The world is rebuilding, but the Cold War is casting this long shadow, you know what I mean? And society itself seems to be rapidly transforming. So what kind of picture do those early letters paint of Lefebvre's mindset during that time?
Well, these letters really provide a fascinating window into his thinking. One striking theme, especially in those early years, is Lefebvre's concern about what he saw as a decline in religious knowledge. This waning influence of the church, if you will. He even, believe it or not, pointed to emerging technologies like radio and cinema as distractions from faith.
Interesting. It's almost as if he saw these new forms of entertainment as competition for people's hearts and minds, right?
Precisely. He felt they were pulling people away from, say, traditional religious practices and toward a more secular worldview, which understandably worried him deeply.
And it wasn't just about entertainment, was it? He seemed deeply concerned about the threat of communism, especially its atheism.
Absolutely. You have to remember the historical context, right? The Cold War was at its peak, and the specter of communism loomed large. Lefebvre saw it as this stark contrast, a direct challenge, really, to his vision of the church's role in society.
So for him, communism represented not just a political threat, but a spiritual crisis, too.
Yes, he believed that communism's atheistic foundations directly undermined the moral and social order that he saw the church as upholding.
And speaking of social order, he also seemed really concerned about the family, didn't he? He really emphasized traditional teachings on marriage and seemed to, I don't know, critique anything he perceived as straying from that.
That's right. This emphasis on marriage and family as the bedrock of a strong and stable society was a recurring theme for him. It reveals his deeply held convictions about social order, for sure, and the importance of maintaining tradition in, well, a rapidly changing world.
And if family was one pillar of that social order, education, especially for young people, was clearly another, right? He seemed really anxious about secular influences creeping into schools.
Absolutely. He believed that education, particularly religious education, was absolutely crucial for instilling Christian values, shaping young minds. He saw secularism in schools as this direct threat to the church's ability to fulfill this role. It's like he was watching the world shift beneath his feet, and these letters were his way of, I don't know, trying to make sense of those shifts and solidify his vision for the church's place within it.
And this is all before Vatican II even enters the picture.
Yeah.
Little did he know.
Right. That's when things really get interesting, with the church itself becoming the arena for these anxieties to play out.
Exactly, and we'll dive into that period right after this. So what happens when Vatican II arrives on the scene in the mid-1960s? We're not just talking about a new council here.
We're talking about a period of immense change within the Catholic Church itself. And it's here, in the letters from this period, that we see Lefebvre's anxieties will really intensify.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, those later letters are almost a different genre, you know?
Real.
They're more urgent, more passionate. His tone shifts as he grapples with the reforms that Vatican II initiated, and of course their implications for the church.
It's like he sees the church as this, I don't know, ship on rough waters.
And he's trying to keep it on course.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really seemed to alarm him was this concept of collegiality, this idea of shared governance in the church.
He felt it undermined the authority of the Pope, which he saw as the cornerstone of unity and tradition.
That's fascinating, isn't it? He saw the Pope as this sort of like anchor, holding the church steady against the shifting currents of the world.
But with this new emphasis on collegiality, he felt that the church was losing its footing.
And then there's aggiornamento that push for like updating or modernizing the church. That was another major source of concern for Lefebvre. He worried that this updating was leading the church away from its traditional teachings, its true path.
You can really feel his anxiety in those letters.
almost a sense of, I don't know, foreboding. He was worried about the direction the church was taking, about the potential for it to lose its identity, in the face of all these modern trends.
He even saw changes in priestly formation, the liturgy, even things like the attire of priests. The move away from the cassock towards a more modern style. It was all unsettling to him. It's like he felt a sense of loss, like this feeling that something sacred was being discarded.
It's important to remember, though, that Vatican II wasn't about, erasing tradition. Its goal was to address the challenges of the modern world, really, bring the church into dialogue with contemporary culture.
Right, and that's a really important perspective. But it seems like those conversations, those debates, sparked a lot of anxiety among those who felt Vatican II was a departure from tradition, like Lefebvre.
Absolutely. The debates were intense, and they continue to echo today. For example, Lefebvre was deeply concerned about ecumenism, this idea of reaching out to other Christian denominations. He worried that it would blur the lines between Catholicism and Protestantism
Yeah.
and, compromise the integrity of Catholic teachings.
It's almost as if he saw the Catholic Church as like this lighthouse,
Yeah.
a beacon of truth. And he worried that by reaching out to these other groups, it might diminish its light.
You're right. It wasn't a simple issue of, theological differences. It was also about maintaining a distinct identity, a sense of purpose. He viewed those compromises as a threat to the church's core mission.
So what does all of this tell us about Lefebvre's vision for the church and about the anxieties of a changing world?
What's truly fascinating is how these letters, written decades ago, still resonate with some of the debates happening within the church and society today. The tensions between tradition and change, the role of authority, the challenges of modernity. These are issues that continue to spark, discussion and even division, both within the church and the world at large.
It's almost like a time capsule, right? Showing us that some questions and anxieties never fully fade away. They just take on new forms in different eras.
And that's the beauty of historical exploration. By diving into the past, we gain a deeper understanding of the present and can even, anticipate what the future might hold.
So we're left with a lot to think about. These letters are a window into a period of great change and upheaval, both for the Catholic Church and for the world at large. They offer a compelling glimpse into the mind of one man wrestling with those changes, trying to navigate a world that felt, increasingly unfamiliar.
It's striking how these anxieties seem to just build throughout the letters.
Almost like a crescendo. As we move into, say, the late 1960s and into the 1970s, Lefebvre's tone becomes even more critical, sharper even.
He seems to be witnessing what he called the contemporary heresy unfolding before his eyes.
Yeah, that phrase, the contemporary heresy, it's incredibly revealing. For Lefebvre, this wasn't just about disagreements over, specific teachings or anything. It was about what he saw as a complete rejection of the church's traditional authority and its role in the world, really.
So it wasn't just about theological debates for him. It was about the very idea of authority itself, both within the church and in society as a whole, right?
Precisely. He was deeply concerned by what he saw as this growing emphasis on democratization and individualism. He saw these trends as threats to order and stability, really, both within the church and in the wider world.
It's almost as if he felt society was losing its moral compass and that the church, by embracing these modern trends, was in danger of losing its way too.
That's a really insightful observation. For Lefebvre, the church's strength, its true strength, was rooted in its unwavering adherence to tradition, its hierarchical structure, its clear moral teachings. He felt that any sort of compromise with these modern trends was a betrayal of the church's core mission, you see.
And this disillusionment, this fundamental disagreement, ultimately led him to break with Rome, right? To found the Society of St. Pius X, the SSPX. He felt he had to take a stand for what he believed in, even if it meant separation.
Exactly. Lefebvre's story is undoubtedly a complex one. And it's important, I think, to avoid easy judgments. He was a man of deep convictions, shaped by, a particular time and place. His letters give us this glimpse into a mind wrestling with these really profound changes, these anxieties, changes, by the way, that I think continue to resonate within the church and the world even today.
That's what I find so fascinating about them. They're not just historical documents, right?
Right.
They're windows into these really enduring questions about faith, about authority.
Yeah.
The challenges of navigating a rapidly changing world.
And that's what makes this deep dive so insightful. By exploring these letters, we're not just learning about, one man's views. We're engaging with some of the most I'd say, fundamental questions, the ones that continue to shape our own lives, our own worldviews.
It's given us a lot to ponder, that's for sure. Expert speaker, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for walking us through this fascinating deep dive into the life and thought of Archbishop Marcel V.
It's been a pleasure. And I really do think these letters are going to spark some more reflection, some more conversation, hopefully.
And to all of you listening, thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you'll keep exploring these questions, keep diving deeper into the complexities of history and faith. Until next time, keep those thinking caps on.